Alright, so what's up? It's Dr. William James here. Um, I'm here to real quick to talk to you about my book. It's been out a minute now. It's been out like 2 years. The Individual Think First. I've never done a full like video speaking about it. Um, the book is in Barnes and Noble. It's on Amazon. You could get a Kindle version. You could get a hard copy, soft copy. Um, Whenever people ask me what the book is about, I always either give them like a politically correct version of what the book is about. Like if you look on Amazon.com, it says the book focuses on philosophical perspectives of human individuality and socialization processes. So I either give them that definition, or I basically just say the book is about how everyone is different. So here I'm going to go a little bit more in depth, speak about what the book is about. So the book is titled The Individual Think First. Here is, on this side right here, is a globe, the world, and then here is a brain. So I titled it The Individual Think First because basically every individual is different. I think everyone would agree with that. But then again, that's a thought. There might be one person out there, there might be that one individual that doesn't think everyone is different. As crazy as that sounds, there are people that are crazy. That's another aspect, that's another part of the book. But anyway, so I have the brain, I have the world, and think first. Every individual is different, so you should think before you judge someone. You should think before you open your mouth, before you speak on certain topics. So that's basically why it's the title. That's why the cover looks this way. Obviously, this is me. I'm the individual who wrote the book, so that's why I put myself here. Then the globe, then the brain, and the whole concept of think first. I'm currently working on part 2 of this book. So that's the great thing about this book. If you read the book, in the conclusion, I say, I may be writing a part 2. I have a lot of learning to do, a lot of growing to do, and I may revisit the same topics. Like I outlined that, I put that in the conclusion because I knew that. Any person who's aware of themselves is aware that they're always learning, and like we're all constantly going to be learning. Some people are aware of that, some people aren't. I'm one who's aware of that. So I was aware that I'm going to grow, and my concept of some of the topics that I discuss may change, or I may just become more aware, be more knowledgeable on a topic, and my view stays the same, but I still want to address it a second time. So I'm currently working on part 2 of this book, and my view in some areas have changed, but for the most part, it's the same. But I'm going to address different topics. So in this book, I just basically talk about how every individual is different, and we're different based on like our life experiences. We're different based on race, ethnicity, based on what we've studied, what we haven't studied. Things like that affect the way we view things. So I talk about different topics: marriage, religion, science, history, education. I'm a doctor in education, so I'm going to speak about education. I talk about astrology. I talk about sex, you name it. I talk about a variety of different topics and how different people view it differently and reasons why they might view it differently. So sometimes I'll give like a historical a view of the topic, and then how different cultures and areas and people view it differently. And then I sort of give my view on it and why I view it the way I view it. So for example, I talk about astrology, the whole zodiac sign thing. Like anyone who knows me, like they know that I'm not one who's big on like judging people based off of their zodiac sign. And I know a lot of people who do that. Like you'll meet someone and the first thing they'll ask you is like, you know, what's your zodiac? You Aquarius, you Capricorn, you Virgo, Leo. They ask you that and they want to know so that they can judge you based off that. I think that's stupid. So I go over, you know, the zodiac signs. I go over, you know, what are the character traits of each zodiac sign, and I outline why I view it the way I view it. Um, Basically, if you switch up the signs, there would be people who match it from every sign. You know, there's 7.6 billion people on Earth. If you switch Leos with Virgos, there's going to be people who match, you know, the descriptions, but it's not in totality like every person who is a Virgo is this way, every person who's a Leo is this way. There's some people who don't fit it, and then there's some people who fit it. But you could switch the signs and you could get the same thing. So I don't like the whole generalization of people based on, you know, a 30-day time span of when they were born. I think that's ridiculous. Just with the concept of saying that if you plan your pregnancy, you can determine the character traits your child will have, which is ridiculous. You know, you have to take life experiences into consideration. You have to take culture. You have to take their upbringing. You have to take everything into consideration to what shapes a person to have certain character traits and helps them become the person that they are. And I speak about that, like, I do a comparison. There was a serial killer named Charles Ng, and then there's Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, both of them are Capricorns, but they have two totally different people, and their character traits are totally different. One is a serial killer who's very violent, and one practiced nonviolent and was a civil rights leader who was well known throughout the world for being nonviolent. So you meet a Capricorn, and then you may think that he's Charles Ng, or she is more like Charles Ng, but they're actually more like Dr. Martin Luther King. So you just prejudging them based off that would just throw your whole, you know, perception of them off. You would be incorrect. So that's like how I outline it. That's how I do it throughout the book. I go over like marriage, relationships, and some people, I talk about parenting. Some people say, well, you're not married yet, you're not a parent yet, etc. Well, what is your view of marriage? What is your view of parenting? Are you talking about, you know, like a European view of having a wedding ring and someone, you know, you went down to the Justice of Peace and you have papers that say you're married? Everyone doesn't view marriage the same way. First of all, for you to be able to identify whether someone is married. In some cultures, as soon as you lay with a woman, you have sex with a woman, you're married. So, you know, I outline different views of it. You know, it may sound ridiculous to some, but that's what it is. Parenting, does that mean, like, are we talking about biological parent, or are you talking about someone's caretaker, where you take care of someone, you help raise them, someone looks to you as a parent? Like, what's your view of parenting are you talking about? That's another thing I go over. But even without that, you know, as an individual, you have a view of how you want to parent before you are biologically a parent. Like, I'm not biologically a father yet, but I already have a view of how I want to parent. So speaking from that view, you outline certain things that you want for your children. So I give that view, and I give different views of parenting. Certain things that I agree with, certain things that I don't agree with. Could it change when I'm a parent? That's a possibility. But these are things that I thought out. Obviously, that's the whole point. Think first. And then I wrote about it. I talk about how there are different types of marriage. Obviously, it is monogamous relationships, and then there's polygamy. Then there's polygamy, where like people marry themselves. So I talk about that. Those are really the only concepts of marriage. There's either a monogamous relationship, either heterosexual or homosexual, and then there's polygamous relationship where multiple people, either multiple wives or multiple husbands, and then there's just one individual who marries themselves and shows self-love. So I'll talk about these different concepts and how they're becoming more popular, um, and my view of things. Me being a heterosexual male, obviously my view of marriage is going to differ from someone who's not heterosexual male. Um, Also, you have to take culture into consideration. So these are just different things that I discuss, and then I throw in my view of it and why I view it the way I view it. I'm not against polygamous relationships, but for myself, I think I'm the type to have, like, I'm cool with a monogamous relationship and just having one wife. So that's just my view. Um, as far as other things I discuss, I talk about things that are changing over time, like with this whole concept of people being able to identify how they want to identify. I address Rachel Dolezal. Is that how you say it? Rachel Dolezal or Dolezal? Whatever. Her. A white woman trying to identify as black. Um, I'm not with people being able to identify with whoever or however they want to identify, because I see that as detrimental to society. If we have things in place such as, there's laws and things in place to protect black people from discrimination, such as affirmative action. If you have non-black people identifying as black, then they're just going to be able to do both, and then it's just going to sweep out the fact of the injustices that are occurring. If we need this place to employ a certain amount of black people, but then you have white people identifying as black, that's just going to like sweep that away. So I discuss that and a myriad of other topics. If you read the book, you'll be able to see the different things that are discussed. I talk about science, carbon dating, to give you a better understanding of why I view things the way I view things. Some people give more credit to certain things, and some people discredit it. So I review these topics, I discuss them in great detail. One view that changed, this book was published probably 2 years ago now. I had a more Christian view when I was writing the book aspect of religion, and now I don't have a Christian view. So my view is more non-religious now. So now when I write I still believe in the Bible. It's just more non-religious view of the Bible. So in part 2 of the new book, you'll be able to see the different change in that aspect. Yeah, so I hope this gives a little bit more clarity as to what the book is about. I talk about so many different topics. I really think it's a great book because, it's a fact. Every individual is different. I talked about suicide in a chapter, like how people, they kill themselves for different reasons. Different cultures view suicide differently. Like Japan has one of the highest suicide rates. Like every year they have one of the highest suicide rates, and that's because if you look up something called seppuku, in their culture, like suicide can be viewed as a way as to regain honor. If you do something to dishonor your family, taking your own life, if you do it in a certain manner, you can regain the honor of and respect of yourself and your family. So I talk about a whole bunch of different topics and talk about how every individual is different, how they view things differently. Just to shed light on things, I give a brief background, a brief autobiography of myself. not too detailed, but somewhat, about where I came from and my upbringing, to give you a better understanding of why I view certain things the way I view it. Um, and basically, if everyone wrote, a book about the individual, about themselves, it would be different. So it's definitely a book to check out. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm working on number two. The title of the second book is going to be The Individual Think Again. So this book is The Individual Think First. Part two is going to be The Individual Think Again, because that's what I did. I thought again, reviewed some of the same topics. There's, things are changing in society, and I revisited some of the same topics, and I'm going to be looking at new topics that need to be discussed. Like, you can already see where we're heading with this pedophilia stuff. Like, you would never think you would see people defending pedophilia and talking about, oh, they're born this way. But these it's the individual. People are going to do this. Obviously, pedophiles are going to try to defend it because, it's to their benefit. But if you haven't read the book, go get the book now. You could go on Amazon. You could just go type it in on Google. The Individual Think First. You could go to Barnes and Noble. Tell them about the book. Author is Deon James, and check out the book. Let me know what you think, good or bad. I recommend starting at the conclusion, then going back to the introduction, and then reading it from front to back. All right. So, not here.